What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Unparalleled Sports Talk with yours, Kwame Fisher Jones. As always, I am him. And I'm talking some NBA with my boy Everett Terry Jr., aka Sports Talk Terry, on all social media platforms. So last week we got into Klay Thompson. And
Yep.
we didn't have enough time to talk anything else because there was so many different angles to go with that. But the big news or the big story was Paul George coming to Philly. And since then, some news has dropped courtesy of Paul George about his where he got to Philly. I want to talk about that later or a little after this, but I want to lead off with your impressions of Paul George leaving the Clippers and coming to Philly, and what do you think that does for the 76ers?
I think it would have been a top tier, potentially Eastern Conference table turner 3 years ago. Paul George is
Mm.
still a very good player, but he's also on the plus side of 35. Tell me how many seasons in the last five he's played 70 plus games. Yeah, he did it last year in a contract year, but
Many
when's the
as
last time he
Embiid
did it for?
has.
And there's my point. So you're getting a guy that's a oft injured veteran coming to a team full of oft injured veterans that need to be healthy in order to advance. Nobody cares about them doing what they're going to do in the regular season because they'll finish somewhere between 1 and 4 in terms of standings, depending on Embiid's health primarily. It's really about playoffs and matchups because the two teams are going to have to beat one way or the other. One is going to be Boston, defending champs. Two will probably be the Milwaukee Bucks, and I don't expect them to have the playoffs again without Giannis and or Dame both in the lineup. So you're going to have to be able to go through those two teams. Do they match up better with the
And the
Bucks now?
Knicks.
And the Knicks, yes. But I also think that the Knicks, with the moves they made versus the moves the Sixers made, healthy versus healthy, the Sixers have the edge because they have
But the
no answer
Sixers aren't
for
going to be
Embiid.
healthy.
Well, fair, but we don't know that the Knicks are going to be healthy either. So, point I'm making is, listen, because Julius Randle was hurt, and that was also a game changer. But point I'm making
He
is,
ain't a Knick.
oh, listen, stop it. Listen, point
He's
I'm
still on the
making
roster,
is
but he ain't a Knick.
they gotta find a way to be healthy in the playoffs when they match up against one of those top two teams they're gonna have to beat. Now, healthy, I think they match up better against the Bucks than they do the Celtics because the Sixers haven't shown in Embiid's career that they can beat Boston in a playoff series. So until I see that, I'm always gonna take Boston over them. And I'm from Philly. But the reality is Embiid has not beat the Boston Celtics as the leader of the franchise of the team in the playoffs in his entire career. So until that happens, they always say in order to be the best, you got to beat the best. They got to beat them. If the day they beat them, then I will say the Sixers have the edge. But I don't care if Jesus Shuttlesworth walks in that door in his prime. Until they beat Boston, none of that other stuff matters because that's who they're going to have to go through in the East to get to the finals. They haven't even gotten out the second round yet, let alone beat Boston. So there's a whole slew of other things that are going on here. But I do like the offseason moves. I do like the piece they put around guys like Paul George, Eric Gordon, who's a knockdown shooter. They went out there and added Andre
Sister.
Drummond. They added Andre Drummond, who's the big that people didn't want him to trade 2.5 years ago that they did, but now they got him back. So there's a whole bunch of guys that they brought in that fit the roster. I love the signing of Justin Edwards, Imhotep's finest Philly product, on a two-way contract, who I guarantee will crack the roster this season. And I actually like Mr. LGBTQIA, paint my fingernails all types of colors,
Okay.
Jarrett McLean.
Okay.
I
All right.
like him. I like him. As long as he can shoot
Okay.
the ball, I don't care what he does with his fingernails, his toes, or anything else.
All right.
Shoot the ball,
Well,
kid. That's why he's
let me
there.
let me jump in here. Let me jump in here. You
Shoot.
said a lot. You said a lot. And there are a couple of things I want to circle on. But I'm going to start with this. You're familiar with the phrase working poor, right? The working
Yep.
poor. All right.
A lot of
That's
millions
what
of
this,
Americans.
that's what the Sixers are. They're an organization that is struggling just to get by when there's opportunities and there's a world of people out there who are flourishing by doing less. The Sixers do a lot of activity, but achieve very little. And I'll tie it in this way. You said it'd be a good signing for Paul George 3 years ago. Well, before the season started, the Sixers put themselves in position to have all this cap space for what? Who were the top free agents that were coming out? It was Paul George. That was it. And Tobias Harris. That was it. Those,
He went to
those were
Detroit.
those were the best two free agents. Obviously, LeBron was a wish on a star, but realistically, it was Paul George. Paul George was the big free agent sign, or the big free agent. So you knew going into free agency, we had to get this guy. They lost him. They lost him multiple times. The reason why they got him is because the girl he was with didn't want him anymore. And she had to tell him no 5 times before he just said, okay.
Yeah,
and
the
left
Clippers
and
are
called
stupid.
Tyrone. Until that point, he wanted to be a Clipper. He even said, "Well, you know what? Just date me on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Just give me the Kawhi deal."
And Kawhi don't play. Kawhi don't play and got a better deal than
Kawhi
him.
showed up and got a free T-shirt for the Olympics and said, "Nah, me out." I love Kawhi. Like everybody, I'm a big Kawhi dude. Like I'm a Kawhi,
Me
but I love
too.
Kawhi's demeanor because Kawhi's like, yo, I'm hurt.
And
Well,
I
you
don't care. I'm not gonna
don't
play.
care about resting because I rest because I'm hurt. If I'm not hurt, I play. It's like, okay, the world is not that simple, Kawhi. But anyway, going back to the point with Paul, like he literally said, yo, just date me on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And she still said no. And here go the Sixers. We'll take you. We'll take you. Now, here's why I use the phrase working poor. Their idea is this, and a lot of working poor philosophy is this. I'll just get to the next bill. I'll just make enough to pay the next bill. It's not 60 days, 90 days, a year from now being in a good position. It's about I'll just pay for this. The Sixers have convinced the world that Tyrese Maxey and building around him doesn't exist. They convinced the basketball world that Joel Embiid, who, if you get a chance, just watch him play in the Olympics. Just watch him play against legit top tier Sands, Tyrese Halliburton, Derek White, a couple other guys that have no business being on that team.
We'll
But
get to that.
see him play with the LeBrons of the world, even the Jason Tatums of the world, and well, Kawhi left. But see him play against the elite guys of the world, you're going to see a difference. You're going to see a difference. He fouled out yesterday in the exhibition game against Derek Powell. Say less. He don't even say anymore. He fouled out in an exhibition game against the Dallas Mavericks backup center. Moving along. The Sixers are
Dwight
convinced that
Powell.
this is our king. This is the guy we're going to build around. Realistically, their goal is to just make it appear like they're competing for a title because they know Embiid's never going to be healthy enough for a stretch playoff run. And in the event that he is, then they'll be able to pay 2 months, not just one. In the event overtime happens, they'll be able to pay two bills and not just one. The Paul George deal, the fourth year, I don't know if it's a player option. I do, but I forgot. It escapes my mind if it's a player option. But the bottom line is the Sixers have hitched their wagon to Paul George and Joel Embiid for 2 years. After those 2 years, they're going to be rid of Joel Embiid, whether it be through trade, through free agency, and they're going to try to move Paul George and build this team around Tyrese Maxey. When instead, what they should have done, because they had all this ridiculous cap spaces, they should have built around Tyrese Maxey. They should have taken a step back, went back to school, went on a credit repair program, got a better job, maybe starting out making less money, but has the opportunity for career growth that will pay you more. So you move out of the working poor block and move into the middle class block.
Okay,
Let me
so
wrap it up and I'm going to give it to you. Just let me
all right.
wrap it up and give it to you. I told you weeks ago, when you sat back and you thought about it, you gave me I'm about to take a really relaxing poop look. And you liked the move. When I said, go after Cade Cunningham. I don't know a lot about him, but I know Detroit does not want to pay that money to a guy on a team that habitually sucks. You can offer them veterans. You go look at what Detroit did this offseason. They just signed veterans. They gave Valanciunas like 20 million a year. Why? Because he's a veteran. They signed Tobias. Why? Because he's a veteran. They wanted older people in their locker room. They didn't want to give that money to Cade Cunningham. They just fired the GM that drafted him. They just fired the coach that wanted him. They didn't want to give that money. Make that move. Now you have Cunningham, Maxey. Granted, you're not going to beat the Celtics this year with that lineup. You ain't beating the Celtics next year or this year with the lineup you have right now.
I
You're
agree.
not going to beat the Knicks, not because of a talent situation, but because you're not tough enough. It's not about health with Embiid. It's about a toughness that he lacks. And I'm not saying he's soft. I'm not saying that, but he doesn't have the championship prerequisite grit to get over a hump. All told, floor is yours.
So to go to the credit repair analogy, I'm
You
actually going to
like
say
that?
this. Yes, but I think you got it a little skewed. I think that they did what they needed to do to fix their credit, being they cleared their cap of all the dead contracts and bad deals that were signed Elton Brand, Brian Colangelo, however far back you need to go to get your
Don't
books
put
clear.
that
But
on Elton Brand. It's not Elton
well, hold
Brand's
on.
fault.
Well, hold on. Give me a second though. Follow me for a second. They fixed their credit. They got their credit right. But as soon as they got their credit right, they went out and bought a flat screen TV instead of taking their credit and managing it better to give themselves generational credit that could get them into real estate or get them property acquisition. So to your point, they did fix the credit. They got all the bad money off the books and came in with more cap space than they've had probably since you were in your 20s and since I've been a teenager, right? Long time. Neither one of us have been there a long time. But the point I'm making is, even with that, they didn't make the right move. The moves they needed to be made were moves that would have been better helpful by getting younger and doing it through free agency. You found a gem in Maxey by getting him in the draft when you did, him developing the way that he did. You learned that Embiid is not the piece you build around in today's NBA because he's not a championship caliber player. To your point, Joker only wins because they surrounded Joker with guys that were championship built and ready to do the stuff that Joker can't do in the playoffs.
And
Let Joker do
Joker's
what he
available.
does.
And Joker's available.
Exactly. Let Joker do what he does. Let him play all the games and let the guys around him do all the grunt work. The Sixers don't have that. They've got Maxey and a bunch of guys. You saw what they looked like without Embiid last year. They were wolf because they didn't put the right pieces around. If they took this offseason roster with guys like Caleb Martin and Eric Gordon and Drummond and put those guys on last year's team, I think they have a better chance of definitely getting past the Knicks because they would have had the toughness, the pedigree, guys that made deep playoff runs with Caleb Martin, Drummond, who comes in and can spell and beat and get you 15 rebounds. He may only get you 4 points, but now that frees up shots for all the other guys on the offense. And you've got outside shooting that they struggled with. This fills in the roster better. To that point, again, it comes back to what you and I've both said. The issue is that I don't think that the Sixers have enough to beat the Celtics this year, next year, the year after. I think the move has always been, and I've been loud and proud about it, they should have blown this up years ago and got rid of Embiid when they had the highest value for him. Coming off that MVP year, as crazy as it sounds, it's been done in the history of basketball. Trade the MVP away, get max value for him, and reload because they would have had a chance to go out. Imagine if they had done this 2 years ago during the Victor Wembanyama year. Suppose they happen to get lucky.
I
And
don't
I'm
even
using
want to
that as an
imagine.
example. But
Yeah, I don't
imagine if
even
the
want to
Sixers
imagine.
get Wembanyama to play with Maxey. Do you like the Sixers now against the Celtics? Because I damn sure do.
Well,
And they're young as hell.
The Spurs are a smart organization. They have Victor Wembanyama on
Fair,
their radar.
but
But
you get better
I
odds
get
with
your point.
more balls to bounce by getting rid of him and acquiring a ton of trade assets, a ton of trade chips. So the point I'm making is there's a lot that they could have done. We can all sit here and play armchair therapist, Monday morning quarterback about what it could have, should have. At this point where the Sixers are they better than last year? Yes. Are they still better than the Celtics? No. And it sucks because I like Paul George
they're better
and I
than
want them to win.
last year. I don't even think they're better than last year. There's a chance they catch lightning in a bottle. And I'm not being I'm not jerking your chain here, I'm not being facetious. There's a chance because with Embiid playing the Olympics, he'll come into camp in he'll become in better shape. And right now, if you listen closely, Tyrese Maxey is somewhere in the gym on his third workout of the day. So when you have that guy in your organization, a guy that works out 4 times a day, a guy that doesn't post his workouts on social media, not because he doesn't want, not because it's not because he's against it, it's just because it's not something he thinks about. When you got a guy that quietly was passed over for the Olympics for a guy like Derek White and Tyrese Halliburton, he's gonna have that on his shoulder. As you see, the theme of the show is why the hell is Derek White and Tyrese Halliburton on my Olympic screen team? But
Tyrese, yes. Derek White, no.
Yeah, Tyrese had 50 good games, man. 50 good games. He had 50. You can make that face all you want. He had 50 good games this year because he struggled toward the end of the year. He struggled in the playoffs. And
he
don't you act like he didn't struggle against Boston.
He played hurt. Yes, he played hurt.
He hurt.
Remember, he was trying to make the max amount of. He tried to make the max amount of games to make the All-Star team because of the kicker in his contract. I get why he did it. It was bad business, but it ended up hurting the team in the long run. He's got his contract now. I promise you, if he hurts his hamstring, he's not going to try to play through it. He'll wait till he's healthy so he doesn't hurt his team like he did the back half of the year.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was.
We all knew it.
He was
the man was one of the best. He was one of the best. He was one of the best, most complete point guards in basketball the first half of the year. His assistant turnover ratio was ridiculous.
Hall of Fame coach. He had a tremendous Hall of Fame coach and a tremendous system on a team a lot of people didn't prepare for, and they played at a ridiculously high pace. 10 to get you 20 that people will be waiting for the Pacers this year. Moving back to the Sixers, we can talk about the Pacers later on. Moving back to the Sixers, I don't like the Paul George sign. I'm gonna go on record and say it. I don't. I don't think it makes them a better team. Paul George did not want to come to Philadelphia. No one leaves the West Coast and goes to Philadelphia. Nobody. Not on purpose. They're not
Right.
happy about it.
You left
And,
you left Philly and went to the West Coast.
well, I left Philly twice and went to the West Coast. And as much as I am unimpressed with Northern California, I would never leave LA to go move to Philadelphia. I don't care how much money you offer. I too would say, babe, you can only date me on Tuesdays. I'll take whatever 2 days during the week you got. And even if it's 4 times a month, every other weekend, I'll take whatever you got, babe, because I'm not going back to Philly, dude.
I understand.
Him doing the podcast with the Sixers jersey on was cute.
Right.
But him spending the whole time talking about how much he missed his boo.
And how the Clippers played him played in his face. Yeah, that was crazy.
And Kawhi
Two,
and
2 years
quote,
to 60 million is diabolical, man. It's like, what are we talking about?
Kawhi's quote is awesome. What did Kawhi say? He said, I ain't mad at you. Go get your money. Not I want you to stay. Not we gotta figure out a way to make this make work, Lawrence. Not we can't let Paul go. I ain't
Because
mad at you.
Kawhi don't care.
Oh,
Kawhi busy
Kawhi
eating fruit,
cares.
and he's at the Olympics eating fruit in his Chevy Tahoe from 1995. He's cool. He don't care about nothing. He still got the cornrow plats. He don't care about nothing, man. He just want to play ball and
Kawhi
relax.
cares, but he sees what everyone else sees. That with Paul George in tow, he's reached the ceiling. There's a phrase, old adage that he's closer to the floor than he is to a ceiling, and that's what Paul George is right now. And I don't. The Sixers' issue was not scoring; it was the toughness plays. It was Isaiah Hartenstein, and we're going to talk about him as one of the free agent pickups, getting those offensive rebounds. It's Joel Embiid looking at him, looking at Josh Hart, and instead of engaging with Hartenstein or going up and get the ball, he boxes out Josh Hart. Like those are things that those are holes the Sixers have. I think Drummond was a good signing. I like Drummond because he'll give you some rebounds. And I believe, and this is where we part. I do believe in Nick Nurse as a championship coach. I believe Nick Nurse will identify or has, excuse me, he along with Rico Hines and Elton Brand have sat in a room and said, there's no way in hell we can build this. We can go with an offense centered around Joel Embiid anymore. So we have to figure out a way to have a system where it's a two-tier system. Something along the line that will get Tyrese into the flow of the game early so he doesn't go those long quarters and stretches without getting buckets. Something that'll get Tyrese easy buckets. Something that'll get Caleb Martin going on the transition game. And we've got to identify legitimate second score. Maybe Paul George can be that, but I just don't see it. I see a schism between a point in the post between him and Embiid. And the problem is Embiid doesn't play in the post. They play in the same action. They really do. They operate in the same office. I just don't see it. Now, if Everett can reach Embiid, Everett can get to Embiid and tell him to focus on rebounding. Tell him to focus on, the Patrick Ewing baseline jumpers, two a quarter, and just focus on defense. We've got a shot, but he's a selfish ball player. I don't see it happening.
I agree. And what I like about, and I'll give you this, do I think that Nick Nurse is a top tier coach in the association? He's better than average and he's way better than Doc. But what I will say is
Say
I
shots at
like
Doc. Find a reason
Doc
to get
stinks.
Doc in the scope.
Listen,
A
Doc
reason to take
stinks. Listen,
shots at Doc.
listen. At the end of the day, the one thing that Nick Nurse did that Doc Rivers didn't do is identify his Fred Van Vliet. Because in Toronto, what made Toronto dangerous? Yeah, they had Kyle Lowry and they had DeMar DeRozan and they had, Kawhi Leonard. But the guy that really made that engine that Nick Nurse loved to death was Fred Van Vliet. And what he's done in Tyrese is identified the Fred Van Vliet in Tyrese. He's a guy that can get you 20 to 25 a game. He's not going to ever be a 20 and 10 guy because that's not his game. He's a score first guard.
You might want to go a little higher than that, my man.
Well, point I'm making
25
is
to 30.
He can get you the buckets. He's not ever going to be a great defender. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get you 10 assists a game, but he has the ability to fill it up. I tell people Tyrese Maxey coming into the season was looked at more of a poor man's Lou Williams. Now he's looked at about Fred Van Vliet, if not better, by most people in basketball circles. And that's not a bad thing. because Fred VanVleet is a very good basketball player. Do I think that that combination, if they center the offense around his strengths, and like you said, take the ball more out of Embiid's hands and focus it more on to Maxey and let Maxey initiate the offense is better long term for the Sixers? Absolutely. Because the one thing you and I both agree on is 4 years from now, Tyrese Maxey will be here, Embiid won't.
I don't even think Embiid will be in the NBA in 4 years. But
Wow.
he may be on your geriatric, like, you know, veterans
He's sitting
minimum.
in Charlotte,
Yeah,
as a
like
backup center.
you know what I
Jesus.
mean, in that type of situation. But no, the beauty about Tyrese, and this is why I would love to see them go after this guy, but I know this guy hates Daryl Morey. So although I'm surprised Paul George signed on with Daryl Morey. The beauty about Tyrese is Tyrese can play in any style, and that helps them. So they can flip and go, you know what? We can go with a half court Embiid set for a while, or we can go pace and space with Tyrese. We can go transition with Tyrese. So those are the things that are exciting. Despite not liking Paul George the signing, and despite having my issues with Joel, I like where the Sixers are as an organization, because I don't know what Tyrese is just yet. I don't know if he's a franchise player. I know he's a really good player, and I know he's got a high motor and a tremendous work ethic. It's one of those things where I wish the Sixers had that Boston Celtics pedigree, where a guy can pick up a phone, and on the other line is a Bill Russell, God rest the dead, or Larry Bird, or somebody like that. That's on the other line that says, yo, you need to do this. The Sixers don't have that. Andrew Toney is probably someone that could work really good with Tyrese, but Andrew hates the organization. I tried for a year to get him on my radar. Like, he doesn't want anything to do with the city or anything. The best they got is Charles Barkley. So, they not
I'm not
having
letting him
somebody.
talk to anybody.
Yeah. So
No.
but with that said, Kobe, God rest the dead again, would have probably have grabbed Tyrese early on and got in his ear, similar to what he did with Kyrie. And we saw what Kyrie did when Kobe was working with him, the shot against stuff. So bottom line is this. I like the way the organization is going, because 2 years Paul George won't be on the roster. 2 years Joel Embiid won't be in the roster. And prayerfully, basketball guys will remove Daryl Morey from the organization, thus leaving out the, because Joel Embiid sends out a tweet, and I'm gonna use this as a transition to talk about the other team. He sends out a tweet. Did the Bucks give the Celtics a championship because they added the Celtics got Jrue Holiday? And I about fell on the floor, and I was already on the floor. Did the Sixers give it to him? Because the Sixers could have had Jrue Holiday. Elton Brand and Jrue Holiday played on the same team. Why couldn't they get Jrue Holiday? Because their basketball president, his brainchild, is the guy that traded Jrue Holiday to New Orleans and started the process. When Sam Hinkie trades Jrue Holiday, after Jrue Holiday says he wants to be in Philly, after the Sixers were in Game 7 of the second round of the playoffs, now you're going to call him up and say, hey, can you come back? Jrue looked at the phone like, please, please. Am I not going? I'm going to go to Boston. So yeah, that worked out. And Boston gives him a contract extension that Philly would have been more than happy to give.
Absolutely.
Now, so with all that said, I like the way the direction of the organization is going, but I also am concerned because I watched the Knicks make some very astute basketball moves this offseason.
Villanova 2.0, baby.
Well, the Villanova aspect aside, Jalen Brunson is the truth. Boy, cold. And we can act like he's not. No, I did not. I did not. And
I've been watching them for 5 years.
I was in the arena covering the Mavericks, Warriors, Western Conference Finals. I was there, front line, watch, doing game stats. So every bucket, every play I watched, that dude is not the dude that's in New York.
Because he isn't playing behind a ball hog who took all his minutes. Now he gets to play on the floor and be done.
I'm not here to dispute that with you. All I'm telling you is there is no way, nobody should think the Knicks are not a championship contender as long as that mofo is in New York. Because that dude is cold. Cold. I don't care what anybody tells me. He don't need Julius Randle. And he got a guy in Mikal Bridges who plays every game and takes pride in playing every game.
That he played with before. He played college with.
That Mikal plays every game. Like, no, I
I'm
don't
not
say
arguing that.
do that. Josh Hart will fight. Josh Hart will get a rebound in a phone booth against Akeem Olajuwon. He won't get two,
What,
but he'll get one.
what did I
Like,
just
dude,
tell you?
this
Nova
this
2.0. And you know all they're missing? You know all they're missing? And it's going to happen if the Knicks struggle. They're going to get on the phone and say, hey, Jay, you want to come coach your boys again?
Tibbs is a perfect coach for them.
Watch what I say. If the Knicks struggle and they're floundering around 6, 7, 8 seed, when they got this championship aspirations, you're going to hear Tom Thibodeau pushed out. Jay Wright comes in, and I promise you, I'm calling it right now. If Jay Wright comes in and gets to coach all his boys again, I love the Knicks to come out the East because I think with him coaching them, they can beat Boston.
They
Coaching
wouldn't do that to
matters.
Tibbs. They wouldn't do that to Tibbs because what they have in Tibbs is something different than what they would have in Jay Wright. You're right. Maybe, not you're right, because I don't know if Wright leads them to a championship, but Wright could give them better championship aspirations. But you know what Tibbs gives them? A comfortability that they don't have to worry about. They never have to worry about anything coming out of the organization. They never have to worry about leaks, player beefs, all those things. And in New York, that matters because you always have someone trying to find something to rock that boat. They have a stability in Tibbs that you know what you're going to get day in, day out. Does he play guys too much? Yes. Does he have
Yes,
his
birds of it
warts?
to the ground.
Yes. But you know what? I never have to worry about Tom Thibodeau stabbing me in the back. I never have to worry about it being anything other than basketball with Tibbs. With Jay Wright, not saying it would be, but it could be. And Jay Wright has a guy, maybe he wants to play a guy and the organization doesn't want him to. Maybe Jay Wright wants to play Mitchell Robinson, who is who was second or third in the league in offensive rebounds per game. Tibbs and organization says play Hartenstein. We're going to try to move Mitchell. He's got injury history. Play Hartenstein. We'll see if we can get some capital for him and see if we can do something since he's coming up free agent.
But we
Tibbs
don't know
plays
that
him,
that wouldn't be the case. We don't know that. Jay Wright
but,
has
but
never had a single issue at Villanova.
but
Not
he's never
one.
coached. He's never coached. He's never coached on a pro level and dealt with
That's
pro
true.
personalities. Tibbs has, and Tibbs has had success. He's won a title. Look, this is
Half of his
completely
starting roster will be guys he's coached. They
yeah,
trust him more than they'd ever
yeah.
trust
When
Tibbs.
they were on meal plans, now these dudes
Doesn't
own half
matter.
the
The
city.
money isn't going to change the character of guys like Jay and Josh Hart and
The
DiVincenzo
point
or Mikal.
the point I was trying to make, and you took me off track here. The point I'm trying to make is this division, through the conference. You talked about the Bucks. The Knicks and the Celtics are there. They are there. And the Sixers are not. It's no
We
if
agree.
healthy with the Knicks. Because you said if healthy with Julius Randle. If Julius plays, he plays. If he doesn't, if he dies, he dies. Like,
No, I can't say that. He's a
okay,
20 and 10
you
bucket.
can't, but
He's a
I
20 and
will.
10 bucket.
You can't, but I will. And I was a Julius Randle fan. Thought he would be the next Karl Malone. Needs a point guard. Story for another day. Kel Bridges, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Tom Thibodeau. They're going to need some size. They will find that size. I don't think they traded Mitchell Robinson yet. I know that they were close to.
Yeah, they were
I don't
close.
think they've done it yet. They still got DiVincenzo. They still got the young shooter. I forget his name that lit the Sixers up that they kept leaving open. This team is good to go, man. Like, and they're gonna fight. The Celtics are gonna
I'll
fight.
give you that. They're going to be scrappy. The Knicks are going to fight. The Celtics are going to fight. I agree.
So the Sixers got to get some fighters in there. Oubre, I like Kelly. I like Kelly. Grown man called Kelly though. That's we're hoping Caleb Martin brings some of that heat toughness. That's the word on the street
That's what
is.
they signed him for. He
Yeah,
took
well,
less to come to Philly. He took less, a lot less to come to
love
Philly.
to say that, but unless I have a documented photocopy proof that a contract was available to, because JJ Redick tried peddling that he took less money to go to the Clippers because his career wasn't on the line. He had another deal.
We
Caleb
ain't
Martin
talking about
wasn't.
JJ Redick 15 years ago. Caleb Martin's contract offer from the Heat he rejected was publicly spread knowledge. He took significantly less money to come to Philly because I think he was pissed with the organization.
Yeah,
It could have been Jimmy, could have been the organization, could have been
you
both.
know
We
what?
don't know.
Pat Riley, I'm not a Pat Riley dude. Put that to the side. So I'm not calling Biss on that story. I'm just going to say I would love to have seen the deal that he turned down because it's easy to say you're taking less money to come pay more taxes in Philly. You're gonna take less money
You
to
pay more
come pay
taxes in
more.
no, you pay more taxes in Miami. The taxes are
No,
crazy in
Florida,
Miami.
Florida doesn't have income tax, I believe. Florida doesn't have income tax. Less
You're
taxes in
you're
Florida.
you're thinking Texas.
No, it's
Texas is
Texas and Florida. Them states, Texas and
we
Florida. I'm
we
almost
we we
certain.
can Google and check. Google is free. We'll
I
check.
love when you say, I love when you say we Google and check, and then I never hear about it again. That means you checked and I was right. We got about 9 minutes left in the second. You mentioned the Bucks. They didn't make any moves in free agency. They were talking about getting rid of Brook Lopez. Don't know if they will. I know that's been the scuttlebutt. But other than the Knicks, is there any free agent moves in the Eastern Conference that have caught your eye?
Well, other than the Knicks, the only other move that really, and I don't get it, but a lot of people do. Hartenstein to OKC baffles me a little bit, even though that's not really East move; it's an East to West move. I saw the toughness in Hartenstein, but the money he got to go be the center in OKC, I don't understand it at all.
Oh, I love it.
Um,
I love it.
because
I
he's a
love it.
single guy. At what point was he averaging a double double? At what point was he,
So he's a
putting up,
7 and 8
four,
guy. You're
five,
right.
or six blocks, putting up 6, 7, 8 blocks in a game? Like, I'm trying to understand where all this love for Hartenstein. Listen, he's a brother from another mother. God bless him for getting his money. He's like, 50% black. So hey, I'm not a hater. Listen, I understand, bro, but I don't understand why we're giving that man all that money to go give you 7 and 8 a game in OKC. I granted he's not going to need shots because you got Chet, you got Jalen, you got SGA getting all the buckets. You just need a grit guy that's going to get the rebounds and do the grunt work.
And they
I
got
just think
two.
they could have. I agree. I just think they could have been better spent, put that money allocated somewhere else. But again, I will never argue with a Sam Presti move because I think he's one of the most brilliant basketball minds in terms of talent acquisition in the NBA. He almost rarely never misses on draft picks, and he almost always gets the guys that he wants. So,
For me, it
I
was the
mean,
Orlando Magic. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you back.
no, you're fine. So I'm not ever gonna argue with him if he sees value in somebody that other people don't see because he's good at identifying talent before it becomes super talent. So if he says that Hartenstein's the guy, you can only take him at his word because he knows what he's talking about. But I'm just surprised that that's who they targeted as their big free agent acquisition. That was weird to me.
Well, we'll talk about that on the next show when you do the next segment. For me, it was two teams that stood out, one for good, one for bad. I'm going to start with the good, the Orlando Magic. Adding Contavious Caldwell Pope, keeping Jonathan Isaac, and not getting caught into the nonsense of trying to add somebody just to make a move. They had the cap space. They had opportunities to get better. Klay Thompson kind of spurned them away at the end. We talked about Klay already, but Klay Klay was the guy they wanted along with because they realized early Klay wasn't coming to Orlando. He wanted to stay in Dallas. He liked Dallas. So they went after KCP, nailed their man, and then that was smart. They've got a young team, so they don't have to overdo it for anybody. They'll be
Right.
available in the play market. The team that still continues to baffle me is actually two teams that continue to baffle me: Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks.
Mm.
Atlanta may have drafted one of the worst draft picks I've seen since Bargnani. I I don't understand spending the first pick of a draft on a guy that averaged 10 points. You have to dominate at some level to be the first pick in the draft. You have to. If he averaged 10 points and 19 rebounds, bring him in. If he averaged 10 points and 17 assists, if he averaged 10 points and 10 blocks, bring him in. 10 points and he can shoot. What are you telling me here?
I never know between them and the Pistons what they're doing. Never. I feel like they're just
Well, the
recycling.
Pistons are trying, but the Hawks don't appear to be trying. Then they trade DeJounte Murray, who they gave up
Yeah,
every pick that they
everything
owned.
for to
For
New
what?
Orleans, which makes them much better,
Well,
which makes them a
maybe,
lot,
but
makes
what
them
are you
exponentially
doing?
better. I
And
don't
then why
know.
are we holding on to Trey Young? Why are we holding on to Trey Young like
That's the piece that's most baffling because all year you talked about trading him. He was rumored to literally every playoff team just about. I think you keep him and don't move him. Why? Yeah, and the thing is, I could say, well, maybe they're trying to tank for Cooper Flag like the Nets did. But if you're trying to tank for Cooper Flag, you're going to offload Trey Young and take nothing but veterans and picks back because you want to be in a position to get up who people are calling the white brawn. Like, you want Cooper Flag on your team. You want to be awful to increase the chances of landing him. So the only team who got it right was Brooklyn. They gave away Bridges and got a haul for him and were okay with it.
you can if everybody wants to go gung ho for Tom Gugliala 2.0, that's great.
I
But
think
for
he's better
me,
than that.
Well, for me, I just don't understand why you holding. Like I said, why are you holding on to him like an EBT card? Let this dude go. Take what you can and for him.
Yeah,
Like he's
yeah.
not going to do anything for you. And there are two players that, for me, who I watch a lot, and I will never understand why. Well, I understand, but I'll never get how the league, how fans and media like overlook these dudes because they're not bad guys. De'Aaron Fox and Trae Young, franchise altering players. Give you an example. San Antonio was rumored after Trae Young, and Pop said no because Trae ain't a Pop dude. So
No,
that just knocked Trae down even more. But Pop takes Chris Paul. Okay, I got no problem with that. He took Chris Paul. But you put Trae Young and Wembanyama in San Antonio, we're talking about some serious things now. We're talking about some serious things now because Trae goes from the one option to perhaps the third, well, the second this year, and then the third when the guard that they grabbed from Carolina, or was it? I think it was Carolina, right? They grabbed the defensive guard from Carolina, really good player. I forget his name.
yeah.
Can't keep up with these young kids anymore and their names, man, and they all look the same too. But nevertheless, you add him, to that team, or you add Trey. That'll never happen to Miami. You put him on a team with a good organization, with a stable organization, a
Veterans.
fantastic player. Same thing with De'Aaron Fox. Now, who quietly told the Kings, I'm not going to re up on my deal. But we're watching an organization fail. We're watching an organization in the Hawks and then the Kings fail these dudes. So they were definitely, and the Bulls. What are we doing? What are we doing? Do we not want to be an NBA team anymore? You
Right.
added a guy in Josh Giddey who's got issues.
Off the floor.
I don't know
That they
where it
quietly
went
make
to,
go away.
but he was involved in something that you don't want that guy in your locker room. Then you trade on top of that, you traded Caruso. You're letting DeRozan walk. What's going on? And
They
Toby
want to
White's a
be
solid.
they want to be what the Sixers were when they got rid of AI and they had Andre Miller and Iguodala. That perpetual mediocrity that's just good enough to maybe keep competitive, but never good enough to be
It's
bad
even
enough to be talent.
mediocre though.
It's
They're not even
mediocrity, man.
mediocre. They're not. The Bulls are a. And what do we need to see to let Billy Donovan walk? Like, what are
I
we
don't know.
doing with
But I
Billy
forgot he
Donovan?
still coaches that team. He's not
I
been a
didn't
voice at all.
because he had a hell of a team. They had a good team. I mean, yes, Lonzo Ball was a good player. Don't get me wrong.
He never played a minute for him. He stayed hurt.
I'm about to say, Lonzo Ball did not derail your championship aspirations. You had Zach LaVine, who prior to coming to Chicago was an ascending player, a very good player, a highlight reel player. He gets to Chicago, all of a sudden he's hurt all the time. DeRozan was a guy that was always in the Eastern Conference Finals with Toronto. One of the hardest working players in the NBA. Guy went from shooting 4% for the mid-range jumper to being one of the best mid-range
Best mid
jumpers in
range
NBA
shooters in the league.
history. He gets to Chicago.
And he plays. And he plays.
And Caruso, grunt dude, gets to Chicago.
Don't forget
Vucevic.
Vucevic.
I was just like,
Yeah.
Vucevic. Like, what is going on? And what do we need to see before we think Billy Donovan may be the problem? So those two teams and sans the Western Conference team I mentioned, the Bulls and the Hawks. I don't get what they were trying to do in free agency, and they had assets. We got to wrap it up with this segment. We're gonna come right back in the next segment and talk Western Conference free agency moves. This is Everton. I'm Kwame Fisher Jones. We appreciate your time of year. Until next time, be easy.